All right, Joseph, let's talk first about the organisation of the event from this end. It looks very efficient and a really good atmosphere.
It is. It's one of the best Commonwealth Games I've been to. Even the weather's been good most of the time, Tom. Very good organisation, great volunteers, and the sport's been good.
And how difficult is it to get around and see the event security-wise? It looks lower key than before.
Well, it's a very compact city. It's not a big city, and if you compare it to Auckland or something, it's much smaller, and so it's easy to get around comparatively. And the security is pretty easily handled here.
And what about the local enthusiasm and the embracement of the games? Is the Joe public got right in behind it?
Very much so. I think because it's not a big city, it's a small city, so they feel they have a lot of ownership of it, and great spirit among the locals.
And Scotland's doing quite well, so every time there's a Scotsman or Scotswoman, they're getting tremendous support.
Yeah, they are. And also, if Irish and Welsh people do well, I notice there's good support as well. There's a referendum vote coming up here in a month or two about whether Scotland should secede, so the England feeling is slightly different.
Yeah. And what is, and as an aside, I'm interested in what's your feel about how that vote will go from the people you've spoken to locally?
It's close. One interesting thing is that, Scotland is almost all pro-Labour, and so they feel that if Scotland does secede, that would make it very difficult for the Labour Party and the rest of Britain to regain power at all, ever.
I don't know off the top of my head what the majority is they need to carry the vote. Do you know?
No, I don't, Tom.
Anyway, that's aside. Let's go back to the sports events, and we'll take a look at New Zealand's performances. I suppose all the talk here is about the cycling and the high strike rate of medals amongst those cyclists. Yeah,
they've been fantastic, really. The men, fantastic. Eddie Dawkins, Sam Webster, Matt Archbold, Tom Scully, all become sort of household names for a while, and they were talked up a lot before they got here, and I have to say they've delivered in every way. They look powerful and very confident. They work together as a team, and it augurs really well for the Rio Olympics in 2 years' time.
Yes, I know it's not a true international field, but there are some other good teams there, aren't there? England and Australia on the bikes, they've got a lot of money and resources into that sport.
Well, we were just thinking about it last night. The Germans are very good, and the Italians are pretty good, but England and Australia are really major powers in track cycling, and for the New Zealanders to be beating them like that is really something.
Everyone has their turn, I suppose, and cycling's heyday at the moment, isn't it? They put the resources in, they're getting the return.
Yes. It's their games at the moment. Some other sports have come up short, I feel, but cycling have certainly delivered on all the money that's been spent on them.
We've got a bit of day to go, I think, in the swimming, and you may be referring to that. We're still struggling in the pool, aren't we? I know Sophie Pascoe's got a medal. That's fantastic, but the others have come up short. Yeah,
very, very disappointing. Lauren Boyle is still to swim. She's the marquee swimmer in that team, and she's got her 400 and 800 to swim, so they would expect some medals there. So she's swimming tonight, Glasgow time, in the 800-metre final, and she's the second fastest qualifier, so you'd expect her to be among the medals there, but not much else. Even the medal that Sophie Pascoe won yesterday was a fairly soft medal in terms of Commonwealth Games. With the same 8 people swam in the heat and the final.
And swimming is sport. I know Australia are dominant at Commonwealth Games, but at world level, they're not as strong as they used to be.
No, not really. If you don't have the Europeans and the Americans, it's not a strong Commonwealth Games sport. Only Australia are a major power.
And another talking point here is judo. People were barely able to name any of the exponents, but suddenly we've got a bag of medals from them. Yeah,
we're all talking about Ippons now, Tom. 5 medals, 2 silver, 3 bronze. It's fantastic. It's been quite a challenge for the media, actually. They've really had to sort of untangle some of that sport and work out what's going on, and it's been quite interesting. They're a good team, actually. They're good to deal with as well.
They think it might help the profile of the sport in New Zealand. Do you think that's the case? Is this enough to put them on the radar of the everyday sports follower?
Well, I still think most young boys will wake up wanting to be All Blacks, not judo players or judokas, but it certainly does raise its profile a bit. I mean, it's the one chance it has, which is one of the beauties of the Commonwealth Games.
And we'll go to the bowls now, because a gold medal today is, this is virtually a world event for bowls, isn't it, because of it being a Commonwealth sport?
Yeah, it's virtually a world event, and they've done really well. I mean, Jo Edwards was fantastic to win the women's singles the way she did. People are saying she may be the greatest bowler in New Zealand history. 7 world titles and a couple of Commonwealth Games golds and so on. She's really something. But the women's 4 were good, and even the 2 men's team that missed out on the medals missed out really narrowly in one match. So far, it's been a very good performance by the bowlers.
Not quite so satisfying for the Sevens team, but you have to lose sometime. I mean, it's the first ever game they've lost this morning in the final. It's still a fine record, but runs have to come to an end.
I thought they were pretty mediocre over here. They really struggled to beat Scotland. They didn't look good against Kenya. They got past Australia okay, but not brilliantly. And to me, they were clearly outplayed by South Africa. South Africa had so much more speed, made the New Zealand players look cumbersome by comparison. Certainly brings home to me, Tom, that New Zealanders should not be taken for granted they're going to win an Olympic gold medal when Sevens goes into the Olympics in Rio. Yeah,
I tend to agree. I think, in fact, the signals are out there that they may have to cast their net wider than the traditional Sevens squad, because everyone else is going to, and they're already catching up to us.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how fast the South Africans were. They looked like they all had outboard motors on the back of them or something. They were fantastic. And the New Zealanders actually couldn't cope with the pace.
The great thing about Sevens, though, it's now genuinely international, and there's probably 8 teams that could win a gold medal at the moment, and even Kenya is a genuine threat.
Well, look, I mean, New Zealand plays Scotland, and it comes down to the last few seconds. I mean, who would have thought that, in all seriousness, that Scotland would be a threat to the New Zealand Sevens team?
Mm. One disappointment, triathlon. What was your expectation before the event? Would our triathletes prosper, and they haven't?
Actually, it turned out, not that I'm any sort of sage, but it turned out about how I expected. I thought Andrea Hewitt would be an outside shot for a medal and no one else, and really that's how it was. The only thing I'd say is Nikki Samuels had to challenge the system to get into the team, challenge the selectors who didn't pick her, and she won her case and was selected and competed pretty well, came 10th and did better than one of the women who'd previously been selected, Kate McElroy. So Samuels got put into the team triathlon event at the end at the expense of McElroy. So I guess she proved a point.
It's important to note, I think, our earlier success in triathlon, perhaps in the early days of the sport, and there's more teams competing, and they're more competitive, and the standards being lifted every competition these days.
Yes, it's a bit like the women's pole vault or the women's hammer throw. I mean, it was a sport in its infancy, and it wasn't so hard to shine as what it is now. They take it more professionally. There's more thorough investigation done of how to train and what you're looking for from each leg and so on. It's much bigger time now than it was a decade ago.